Good afternoon, everyone, and happy chilly Thursday. Here I'm calling from Harrisonburg, Virginia. My name is Emma Maynard, and I'm the Assistant Director of Career and Network Programming here in the Office of Alumni Relations with JMU. I'm also a proud double Duke, having graduated in 2007 with my undergraduate degree, and then recently this past May with my master's degree. I want to first thank you all for participating this afternoon and for participating live with us. Today's webinar, Making Your Own Path, Thinking Unconventionally About Work and Life, is brought to you by the JMU Alumni Association. We are so excited to bring you this alumni webinar program with the goal of providing career-related resources that help you conveniently cultivate your professional self. Before I introduce today's speaker, I just want to cover a few brief housekeeping notes. If participating live, your microphones are muted for the presentation, but you do have two chat options. During the presentation, as you have questions of our presenter, Nicole, you can choose the Q&A option and send your questions directly to me, Emma Maynard, the host, and then I'll share those at the end of the webinar for Nicole to address. Throughout the presentation, though, you can use our chat option to engage in real time with your fellow Dukes. We'd also love to see you live tweet during the webinar, and you can do that using hashtag JMUAAwebinar. This webinar will also be recorded, and we will send that out to you all. You can also access it on our website in our webinar archive section. As a token of appreciation for you, though, for engaging with us live today, you will be entered into a drawing to receive a special prize courtesy of the JMU Alumni Association. Now it's my pleasure to introduce our guest speaker for today, Nicole. Graduating from JMU in 2007, Nicole majored in media arts and design, producing and directing for digital video, and minored in writing and rhetoric. She returned to school for a Master in Food, Culture, and Communications from the University of Gastronomic Sciences in Pollenzo, Italy, and built on this experience with graduate internships at Food First Institute for Food and Development Policy in Berkeley, California, and the Food Connections Festival in Bristol, England. She moved to Richmond, Virginia in 2015, where she currently works as the Business and Marketing Manager and tour guide for Real Richmond Food Tours. She is also the cider storyteller and wholesale representative to Northern Virginia, Washington, D.C., and the Shenandoah Valley for Blue Bee Cider. It's with my pleasure now to turn things over to Nicole, our guest alumni speaker for today's webinar. Go ahead and take it away, Nicole.
Thanks so much, Emma, and hi to everyone out there. Thanks for being here today. I'm looking forward to talking with you about this crazy path that my life has been after graduation. As you may know, if you've already graduated, it can definitely be chaotic, it can be frustrating and nerve-wracking at times, but it's also full of excitement, possibilities, and opportunities to learn, explore the world around us, and also explore yourself. So I know for me at least, my life since graduation has been nothing like I imagined it would be, but in many ways it's been much better. It's been full of taking risks I never imagined I would take, and it's also led me to meet some of the best people and have some of the most rewarding experiences of my life. So my hope today in having this webinar with you is to get to share just a small part of what that journey has been like, and hopefully offer some words of encouragement, commiseration, and inspiration for you as you continue to build your own path. So before we get started on all of that, I have a very important message. Just want to say, let's see if I can advance this slide. Congrats to all you December grads out there. If any of you are on this webinar or are watching it later, I know the grad students will be getting ready to walk tomorrow night and all the undergrads on Saturday. So just know that I'm thinking of you, and all of us in the alumni community are really excited to have you join our ranks. So let's get into it. As Emma said, I'm a JMU 2007 grad and also just got my master's last year, finished up, or actually 2 years ago now, time goes by quickly, in Italy, and then moved to Richmond. So It's been a long path, and I will not focus so much on the details today, but if you didn't get to see the Alumni Blog that I did, I included the link for you to check out later, and that will go into more of the details and the narrative part of my journey. But today, I really want to focus on you. So as you may have seen when you signed up for this webinar, these are some of the things that we're going to talk about today. For many people, I think, especially in the arts and the humanities, at least for myself and my classmates, I feel like we are more subject to a less traditional career path. We don't necessarily have a direct path for schooling, for experience, and we can sort of make our own way, which leads to a lot of questions and anxiety. So that is, I'll be speaking from my own experience in those fields. But if you're coming from the other side, the sciences, math, law, any of those things, I hope that you'll still be able to find something useful here today. And so we're going to look beyond those traditional career job sites, career counseling, all of those things, which I definitely encourage you to check out as well. I know that Jamie has a wonderful career and academic advising network that I have used on many occasions, so I wanted to preface all of this by saying that's always a great place to start and to continue to go back to. So what I want to focus on a little bit more today, though, are those non-traditional tools, connecting with your own personal network and enabling yourself to take risks. I'm a big planner, so I'm a risk taker with a plan. I try to balance it out a little bit, so you'll see that represented in today's presentation. And for those of you listening today that may know me, I know there's a few of you out there, you may also know that I'm really big on quotes, so it should come as no surprise that this presentation is also going to be full of them. So we're going to start out with the first one. Not all who wander are lost. I know probably all of us have heard this numerous times, but for me, this is a personal favorite because I return to it as a source of reassurance. I often felt that I was wandering, and I often felt that I was a bit lost and without direction, trying to make sense of everything. And this was a quote that I continue to come back to and as use as sort of a little mantra to say, it's okay. I don't have to be lost. I'm wandering, but I'm going to find my way. So if you're feeling that same way, I would suggest, don't lose hope. There is direction, and we're going to help you try to find that today. So next up, I wanted to show you just a brief visual, and you'll see in some of these slides, you may not have time to read every single detail, but I wanted to give you a resource to come back to after this webinar that you could read it. So don't worry, I'm not expecting you to read everything, but in this slide, I just wanted to give you an idea of the many different jobs that I've had. The whole one-page resume thing doesn't really work for me. That was also a source of frustration for a long time until I learned to embrace it and look at it as a different way of being, and how this could actually be a really positive thing, and revisiting the reason why I've had so many jobs, which for me is because since graduation, I wasn't looking for a traditional career path, so I was trying to build everything from scratch. So since graduation, I've sought opportunities with organizations I admired, and in roles where I really could make a difference in the community. Those were my top two priorities. So in turn, this led me to work with a lot of wonderful people and great organizations doing good work, many in Harrisonburg. And my experiences at each of these places continued to build upon each other. So everything sort of led to the next opportunity, and it really helped shape me as a professional and also just as a person. And here's a list of some of those organizations, and shout out if any of them are listening today. I actually intentionally did not look at the attendees recently because I knew I'd be nervous. I'm more nervous talking to people that I know, actually, than people I don't know. So if you're out there and you're represented here, thanks for being here. But as you can see, I've worked with a number of different types of organizations. I've worked with small businesses, governmental organizations, nonprofits, universities, different festivals, and at each of these I've learned so many things, not only in my job role, but also about the different work environments that come with different businesses, different ways of running a business, and how each organization then is a greater part of the community. And especially in a place like Harrisonburg, you have a lot of interaction between those organizations. So it led to a lot of really cool opportunities to get to work with people I had previously worked with, or to work with people that I would work with in the future. So if you find that community that you love, I think that that is a really nice added benefit of getting to work with different organizations. There are all these different connections that you can build upon. So next quote, keeping this in mind, your dream job does not exist, you must create it. And I love this. I found it, on Pinterest somewhere a long time ago, but it's continued to stick in my mind because no job is perfect. And for those of us that have been working for a while, we have probably learned this time and time again. But another thing is that no person is perfect for any one job. So this imperfection provides a lot of opportunity. And I think that it's really important to always keep an open mind and to take the bad with the good and really just focus on what those good things are. The good people, how you've learned about their company, the industry, how you can continue to evolve in your own business. So I think that creating that dream job, it doesn't mean that that's a perfect job. It means that it's a great fit for you, and that you're able to balance any sort of challenges and struggles with the benefits and the positive experiences that you have at a company and in a particular role. So next up, again, visual, you may be able to tell I'm all about lists. So here are just a few of the skills that I have learned in my jobs. One of the biggest skills I've learned over time is how to frame and represent my experience, my expertise, and the areas of specialty that I'm interested in and experienced in it. So this is important not only for a resume, but also for job interviews and from when you're actually working within a job. I think many of us, myself included, get really uncomfortable talking about ourselves and doing any sort of self-promotion, but it's really important to kind of reframe that and think about it as an important way to introduce yourself to other people and to make yourself known to others and have that be an exchange. And then you can kind of figure out where your skills fit with other people's skills and where you can kind of pick up the slack for each other if you are feeling less confident in a certain area. By talking about it with someone, that may be their strength, and so you're able to learn new things that way. And I think it also, in talking about your past experience and those strengths, it helps you gain a greater self-awareness about your own passion, about your areas of strength, and those areas that you want to improve on. So one thing that I've found, because I had rewritten my resume quite a lot, prepared for a lot of different interviews and a lot of time thinking about what my path would be, what I wanted it to be, and how I could get there. So I found it really helpful to start with keywords about types of work I've done or want to be doing, and then branch out for there. So for example, in this list, you can see there's a lot of emphasis on content, on storytelling, production, and for me, being a SMAD major and a writing minor, that was really where my focus was and continues to be. I love the story. And you may have noticed one of my current job titles is Cider Storyteller, which my boss dubbed me, which I just absolutely love. And this is really, it's going beyond just marketing, and it's going just beyond just any one medium like writing or blogging, for example. It's really thinking about the overall goal of trying to share a business's story, trying to share an organization's path. So that's kind of where I started, content and storytelling as those keywords. And then I framed those through the different mediums. So you can see on this list that I have content strategy and development, feature writing and editing, video and film production. So kind of expanding and looking at the actual different techniques in which I would be using storytelling. And then you can also see the same thing happening with the design in the next column there. I was working with a web company, hello Emerge, in Harrisonburg, and there I learned about web design, user experience, all of those things. So really just, again, going back to the basics, design, and then the different ways in which I have learned and used design in my career. So just a few things to think about as you're putting a resume together. Think about those target areas that you have experience in, and also the areas you want to improve upon, because that'll help you as you search for opportunities. All right, so next quote. This is one of my favorites. I actually have this framed on my desk, and it's one I continue to remind myself about. Nothing great has been, and nothing great can be accomplished without passion. And this is something that I continue to return to because that's what keeps me going every day and what makes me excited to get out of bed and go to my job, because I really care about the work that I'm doing. I've found a fit. I like sharing the stories of the companies I'm working for, and I'm working with people who are passionate about their craft, so that always helps as well. So I think whatever it is that you're passionate about, find that and figure out a way that you can integrate it in your daily life and hopefully through your work. And one way that you can do that is I like to start big. So for my dear parents, I was doing art exhibits a while ago in Harrisonburg, and I would always start with these huge ideas, and I would tell them about them, and I would want to do these mixed media experiences, and they would encourage me and support me, but also help me kind of take that down a notch and think about what was actually achievable. And in a particular space or in a particular time frame, that was more my struggle. I always started to think big, but I think that's really important because it helps you think about all of the possibilities and use that optimism, but also then have that healthy dose of realism about what's actually within your reach. And if something isn't within your reach and it becomes this really high priority for you, thinking about how you can accomplish it, having those steps. So for me, I always like to start big. It's always easier to then return to that big picture if you narrow things down and they don't work out the way you expected. You have this bigger idea that you can return to. As I mentioned before, I'm also really big on lists. So I often will use a prioritized list, ABC, to help me figure out what those dream jobs would be, for example, working for a FAR magazine, and then figuring out the reaches, maybe a more localized organization, and then what is actually achievable. So starting with the connections in your network and then building from there, gaining experience, and then improving. I also am big on making a timeline. As I mentioned, that can sometimes be a struggle for me, so it's very helpful for me to write it down, and that helps me really, again, balance that optimism with realism. It's also really important to determine your priorities. So as I mentioned, this is something that I return to again and again, especially when I was in grad school and trying to figure out where I wanted to move. At that point, I was thinking I would be either try to stay in Europe or come back maybe to California or Asheville, which I'll talk about later, in North Carolina. So I was really, my priority was figuring out a community that I wanted to live in, because I grew up in Harrisonburg, obviously went to school there, worked there, and loved the community, but also felt like, it's time for me to try something a little bit different and to maybe try something a little bit bigger. I'm not a big city person, so that was a personal challenge to myself. And that was one of my top priorities, was finding a community that I felt comfortable in, that I felt I could grow in, and that I could contribute to. For other people, your priority might be a particular job, or it could be that dream company. So figuring out what's your top priority. And then also looking amidst those priorities for your themes and your own comfort zones. What do you need to feel secure? What do you need to feel happy and motivated? So for me, I ended up finding out that I really, really love Virginia and really missed it when I was abroad and really wanted to come back and spend some more time here. And I found Richmond. And for me, It was a bigger size, but not too big, and it was close to home, so I could see my parents and my friends that still live there and come back to JMU, and also be in a new place and get to grow and get to explore a new community. So that was sort of a balance of comfort zone and broadening myself. So those are just some things to think about, you know, because it's good to challenge yourself. I sort of had to learn to step it back a notch. I didn't want to challenge myself just for the sake of challenging myself. I also wanted to provide myself with an environment in which I could grow and would feel comfortable and secure, and Richmond has really become that place for me. So as you're thinking about your place, that is something to keep in mind. What can also keep you comfortable while keeping you motivated? And then next, we've sort of touched on this a little bit, but thinking beyond just a job description. If you're out there and you're looking for jobs, it can be a sea of all different websites, and really just sometimes can be overwhelming. So sometimes it can be really helpful to just take a step back. So as you're looking at your priorities, also thinking about the actual work you're interested in doing. So the work environment, the company culture, the feel of the community and the industry at large. And that can, of course, vary company to company, but also city to city. And one of the things that I found for myself in Richmond is a community that feels very similar to what I found in Harrisonburg. You have a lot of motivated people. You have a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of grassroots organizing, an emphasis on art and culture and history. So for me, there were those connections of things that were really important to me and helped shape my work environment while also not being directly in my work environment, if that makes sense. And then also thinking about, as you're looking at different jobs and job descriptions, how it can help you in that greater path. Whether or not you know what that end goal is going to be, how can you use the skills that you already have? How can you learn more and advance in ways and skills that you're looking for and contribute to the company yourself? So I think it's very much a give and take between yourself and your work environment. So thinking about how those relate to each other is really helpful. So you're also going to have to forgive me because I have terrible handwriting, and in the next few slides you're going to be seeing some excerpts from my personal planning notebooks from when I was in grad school, and my handwriting is terrible, so I apologize in advance. But this next slide here, for whatever reason, I decided to use a yellow pen that day, but this was an activity I did where I wrote down all of the ideal factors in a job or work environment for me. And obviously, with every job, there's going to be things that we all like or dislike, we excel at, or are challenged by. So my goal in creating this was not to compile a list of all the things my workplace had to have, but rather to do this sort of internal inventory of the things I learned about myself over the years, over the different jobs that I've had, and really just have it, again, visually, all in one place that I could look at and continue to refer back to. And this also then helped me figure out what among this list were my top priorities, what were the things that I really would like more than anything else. So for me, my biggest thing is really, in my work and my personal life, is to have interaction with good, open-hearted people. I think we can all hopefully say that. That is one of our top goals. But for me, I really value that interaction with people. So having a desk job where I'm not necessarily interacting with many people on a daily basis is difficult for me, and I have had jobs like that in the past, so I've learned that as something about myself. So for me, I was feeling like a higher priority would be to have a job where I was engaging with a community and with a number of people on a pretty regular basis. So this means that I continue to seek out opportunities that allow me to interact with diverse people and experiences. So being active in community building, talking with people, sharing stories, etc. And these are things that I do every day in my job. So at the Cidery, we have a great team where I get to work with them to create meaningful visitor experiences when they come to the tasting room, or when we have special events. We have a cider club party tonight, so really thinking about what is that going to be when people come to the party, you know, what's the layout, and how are we welcoming them? So all of those different factors. I also think about this when I go to work with our wholesale partners to do tastings with them. What's the experience of the customer when they come to interact with our product and the environment? And then, of course, also with our online presence, our website, all of that. So really creating a cohesive experience. So for me, that was a clear fit with the Cidery, and also with the food tours, where I get to guide people, actually physically guide them around to different restaurants in the community and introduce them to the chefs and the staff, and really get to help them experience the Richmond community firsthand. So having that people interaction for me was one of my top priorities. For you, it might, of course, be very different. So this kind of mapping really helps you lay it all out and think about your ideals. You know, again, start big, think of everything, write it all down, and then it helps you kind of pull it back, prioritize, and then realistically think about, you know, what you are willing to compromise on, of course, because we all make compromises and nothing is perfect, but also the things that are really just crucial to you and to your experience. So a few practical things here in terms of connecting and subscribing, in addition to regular job sites, which I've found, especially for my field, there aren't many out there that are very targeted for food communications. So I've had to think creatively about how I can connect with these resources. So one thing that I did in grad school, I was really connected with a lot of people from our school is international, so I was getting you know, recommendations and resources from classmates from all over the world. And then from there, when I decided that I really wanted to return to the States, I was able to hone in, but I had a greater sense of the food community at large because I had started following a lot of these companies of interest on social media. My Facebook feed is about half and half now between companies and my friends. So I'm always reading different articles, and that's a really easy way for me to keep up with the industry. And there's also a lot of cross-referencing. So when I was looking for internships for grad school, that was a really helpful way that I could find out information about openings. And another thing that I found out about through that process was a higher education listserv. And there are many out there, but for me, for my field, Tufts University has one called Food Jobs. So if you too are looking for something in the food industry, that's a really great resource to sign up for. But whatever your industry, look for university resources because they go beyond just you know, jobs within the university. And I think JMU has done a really great job of this. And I'm on my alumni LinkedIn and Facebook and emails from the Writing Rhetoric School and from SMAD and from JMU at large. So just use the networks that you already have and then connect from there. And yeah, as I say in the next point there, seek out community networks. So not only through JMU, but also, for example, if you're thinking of moving to a particular place, look at their community job board, look at their local press, just try to find those specialized smaller networks that aren't going to be necessarily on a national job board. But that being said, it's also important to keep yourself up to date on what are on those national boards because you never know. So a great one is Idealist, and that's also a really excellent site for company profiles if you're trying to find out more about an organization, about the work culture, and what they do in general. They have a really excellent blog and just resource tool that you can search different company profiles. So next up, another page from my notebook. This was, again, something I was very busy in grad school, not only in school work, but also trying to figure out the next step. So here was just a crazy page that I started to put together with different resource sites, networks, blogs, anything that sort of crossed my path. And most of these are still active. Some have changed in their focus or their purpose, and some didn't always provide the best match for me in my chosen field. So of course, take this with a grain of salt, but there were many of these that proved to be extremely helpful for me. And at the end, I have some lists for you all of my top go-tos. So don't worry if you can't read my handwriting here. So you can see on this list that I wasn't just drawing on big, well-known sites, so I was using those as well. Idealist, Glassdoor, LinkedIn is wonderful. I really love LinkedIn because it combines the large network with your personal network. But then I also tapped into the networks through JMU, SMAD, alumni, and regional resources like the Virginia.gov listings, and then those field specialized sites, which for me, Good Food Jobs was excellent. They also have a wonderful resource page. If you read my blog for the Duke's Take 5, you'll see that actually Good Food Jobs introduced me through their founder's profile. That's how I found out about my master's program and decided to apply. So those specialized sites, even if they're not listing it as a job opening, read the bios of the founders, look at the blog, just explore any companies you're interested in, and there might be these other little caveats that lead you to something greater or a better fit for you. So not only was I actively searching these sites every day, but I also subscribed to their e-newsletters, their listservs, the social media pages, as I mentioned. This helps, especially when you can spend hours job searching and on those boards. So I think it's really important to have the information come to you and make it easy on yourself or easier whenever possible. So having those things, even though they flood your inbox, it's, again, a daily reminder, and you'll get to see that news right away when jobs are posted. So another thing, of course, is as that job search can be overwhelming, returning to that list of priorities that I talked about, coming from the yellow list here, returning to those priorities and thinking about, as you're reading job descriptions on these sites, do they have your priorities, or do they have another priority you didn't consider that makes it worth it and maybe redirects your search. So just a few thoughts there. Keep your eyes and ears open for everything. I love to read. I am always surrounded by piles of books. I really need to get more bookshelves. But for me, this is a really great way that I found a lot of different leads for jobs. One was called Tales of a Female Nomad, and this one, she talked a lot about WWOOFing, which is willing workers or worldwide workers on organic farms, depending on who you talk to. And again, I kind of talked about this in my blog, so I don't want to go on too much of a tangent, but that's an excellent international nonprofit where you can volunteer on farms and with organizations throughout the world. So I found out about that through reading this nonfiction travelogue, and it sparked my interest. I ended up looking into it and ended up doing it myself. So it wasn't found on a job board. It was kind of found in this sort of random place. Another thing that I'm really into podcasts, and I think this is a really easy way that you can continue your job search, but also kind of step away from your computer and let your brain still be working, but focus in a different way. So if you find these influences in your field, so for me, Splendid Table is a great resource, and I use that with my work now. I've listened to some interviews with apple growers and cider makers, so it's something I continue to use. But finding out those topics that you're already interested in, they may be interviewing someone that has a company that you're interested in. It could lead you to that next job. And then another thing that's always great is volunteering, which I know is not always a luxury when you're looking for a job and you need a paycheck, but it's just another way to interact with your interests and also make connections with people that you might not have otherwise connected with, and maybe lead you to some work opportunities and paying opportunities. So one of my favorites is Virginia Festival of the Book. That's in Charlottesville every year. So not too far of a drive from JMU either, and really just a great spot to really connect with a lot of different people. So unfortunately, there are no shortcuts to any place worth going, as we all know probably too well. So the path isn't always one that makes sense or is quick, but that process and that struggle can be illuminating, and that is something that I didn't appreciate until much later. But as I've mentioned, I'm really visual. So before I write or I create anything, I visually map it out. And this was a way for me to also kind of step away from the computer and the frustration and kind of actively engage while also de-stressing. So I do the same thing in my career path as I do in my personal life. You know, I try to, the background here, it looks like it's come out a little fuzzy here, but this was actually a collage. I was preparing for an art exhibit and was trying to figure out what was my theme. I had all of these different mixed media pieces I was trying to use and couldn't really find, I guess they say, the forest through the trees. So I ended up just laying it all out there, and then by looking at it, I was able to kind of pick out these common themes. So that is something that can also be really helpful in your job path, and just thinking about how you can map things out visually, and sometimes that gives you a new perspective. So framing and mapping, stepping away from the screen, revisiting pen and paper, having a bulletin board, you know, whatever works for you, keep that element of creativity. And then here's another crazy list for my notebook. This was when I was looking at Asheville. So you can see how I approached it. On the left, I started writing down city details about the communities, the organizations, and cultural aspects that interested me. And then I moved on to specific companies that I was interested in. So I looked at these not only as potential job opportunities, but even more importantly, as potential resources. So I touched on this a little bit earlier, but having these resources to help me understand the community I'd be moving to. So I think it's also important to not be completely opportunistic. You really want to just interact with people and get to know their story and figure out about a place, you know, and whether it's a right fit for you. So I think just meeting with people and really learning about their company, about their story, about their path can be a really illuminating way to figure out your own. And then on the right, you can see I have a contact log. So that's where I kept a list. I'm not one for Excel, so those of you that are adept at it may be cringing at this, but this is how I logged talking with different companies and different organizations. And you can see as the list evolves that many of those later contacts were actually ones that were recommended to me from previous contacts. So everything sort of leads to the next thing, and that is actually not related to Asheville, but I did the same thing for Richmond, connections from friends and family, and I would meet with them and talk with them, and then they connected me with other people, and that's how I was able to find the great jobs that I'm in now. So next up, another great quote, a good reminder: let yourself be silently drawn by the strange pull of what you love. Sometimes it is strange, but it won't lead you astray. So just reconnecting with that passion, keeping that in mind, and really just going with it. Don't be afraid to ask for help. This is one of the biggest things that I learned. When I first graduated, I was very adamantly against, you know, asking friends or family to connect me with people. I thought that I should do it on my own, and I didn't want any favors, and I really wanted to be independent. And then I realized that was really dumb, because the people that know you, they're the ones that can best vouch for you. They're the ones that know your good qualities. They are able to see things in you and connections that you might not be able to see. So don't be afraid. Don't be stupid like I was. Be stubborn. Ask for that help and accept that help when people want, you know, are willing to offer it. And I've been really fortunate that I have a support network. I have really wonderful, supportive parents and brother and friends and family who did not think that I was crazy when I decided to go abroad for grad school. I know quite a number of people thought that was a little bit nuts, but they were extremely supportive and helped me as I tried to figure out, you know, living and finances and all of that, and also just figure out my job path. And, you know, when I was feeling lost, I was able to talk to them. So I know that this is not always the case for everyone, but whatever that support network is for you, whether it's your family or friends, professors, coworkers, classmates, your career counselor, whoever those people are, find those supportive people and just embrace them. Let them help you, and let them, you know, talk with them about your plans so they can help you really because they want to help. So don't be afraid. Okay, next quote. Another one I always like to keep in mind. What would you attempt to do if you knew you could not fail? I think this is really important in figuring out which risks are worth taking, and really just jumping in wholeheartedly to something, and just connecting again to that passion in your life, whatever that may be. And don't be afraid to reach out. There's something, a great resource that I stumbled upon at the Green Valley Book Fair there outside of Harrisonburg, and it was the book version of Road Trip Nation. And this is, if you're not familiar with it, it's actually a PDF series as well. They have an excellent website. They have grant programs that they offer. But the book that I got was the story of the founders. It was 4 college graduates in their last or almost graduates in their last semester of college, who realized that the fields that they were going into were not what they wanted to be doing with their lives, and they started to panic, as is understandable. And so they really they tried to figure out, okay, well, what are we going to do? How do we figure out what we want to do? So they bought an old RV from one of their parents that was trying to get rid of it. It was green. So you'll see when you go on their website that you too can apply for a grant to take a green RV. But what they did was they contacted all of these influencers and celebrities and people they admired throughout the country. And they went and they set up interviews, and they heard back from most of the people that they contacted. And these were big names. You had Wanda Sykes from SNL, Howard Schultz with Starbucks, the guy from Nantucket Nectars with juice that I can't remember his name now. I think it's Tom. But they reached out to these people on a, you know, on a whim and a prayer, basically, to see if they would respond, and they did, and were gracious. And so they created this road trip where they went around the country. And they interviewed these people, and they asked them about their path. And one thing they found in common across all these people was that really none of their paths were straight. None of them made sense in the process, but they all led them to this greater purpose and finding out what they really wanted to do. So that is something I would also recommend. Contact those dream people, whoever they may be, because you never know. They might get back to you, and they might have some really great advice for you. Again, keeping a contact log, as I mentioned, and this also just helps you create that map of connections, but also helps you keep in mind who you've already talked to and who you have that you'd still like to reach out to. And then also just having as many people in your life that are supporting you, keeping their ears and eyes open for you too, because that has been actually how I've found jobs too. People have known I was looking and been able to recommend that I check out a certain thing. So just keeping that open mind and that open communication. Okay, I have a few closing quotes, of course, and then I have some resource slides of some of my top resources. So this one I think is so true and important. It's not going to be easy, but it is definitely going to be worth it, because it's going to lead you to a greater understanding of yourself, and hopefully just continue to help you build as a person and as a professional. This next one is really long, but it is one of my favorites, and it is something that I had framed on my bedroom wall at home, and I was just home over Thanksgiving and noticed it and realized that I had sort of lived my way into the answer, as it says at the end of that quote. I had found work that I find really fulfilling in a great community, and things make sense again. And this was something that even a few years ago, I wasn't really sure. I felt a little bit unsure of when I would feel that way. So have that patience and let the questions kind of sit, because they will eventually find their way into answers. Okay, and last quote here. Inspiration exists, but it has to find you working. So with that in mind, here are some of the things you can work with, some of the resources. These are my go-tos. So you see Road Trip Nation on there. The top one, Delaying the Real World, is the #1 book I recommend to anyone. Again, another book fair find. Thank you, book fair. This is a compendium. It was written in 2005. Many of the links are definitely still in operation, or you can Google search the companies. There's a few that have gone out of, have expired, but it's this compendium of resources, websites, companies, grants, in all different types of fields: environmental, non-governmental organizations, theater. I mean, it's just a great resource to check out. So you can find that on Amazon. Letters to a Young Poet is just generally inspiring and great to return to. Vagabonding, if you're looking at long-term travel, that's a really great guide. The Art of Nonconformity, Chris Gilbo, he has a blog and he has traveled all over the world. So he has a lot of just fun tips on not being afraid to take an unconventional path. And then the bottom two, those are specifically for food jobs, of course, but they're really great resources if you're looking to work in the food community. And they're also just helpful if even if food isn't your specialty, and kind of thinking about how you want to approach different resources. Okay, next up, some blogs and websites. I won't talk about each one, but these are all great. I'd encourage you to check them out afterwards. The Muse and Idealist, they both also do those company profiles I mentioned earlier. And then lastly, here's a couple of my favorite podcasts. So again, look for specialized podcasts in your chosen field, because that's how you can just another way to connect with those influencers in your network. And of course, please don't feel shy about reaching out to me. I would love to talk with you. This is a little strange not getting to see you all out there, so I'd love to hear from you. So feel free to send me a line. I'll leave you with one final thought. This is me in the background, my wonderful roommate on the JMU Alumni Program. Hey, Betsy Jones, took this of me on our program abroad. So now is the right time to get started. Don't be afraid, and good luck.
Thank you so much, Nicole. What an amazing presentation. I don't know that I can even wrap it all up. I'm also a quote person, so I found those really inspiring, and I'm getting feeds in right now from some of our listeners saying, that you had some great tidbits. That's a shout out from Courtney. You inspired another alum, Kelly, to share a favorite quote that she received. This turning toward what you deeply love saves you. It's a quote she received from a professor she had at JMU. And so you've really inspired other people through
good.
those
I'm glad.
quotes.
I'm going to add that to my collection.
Exactly. So we do have some questions from some of our listeners as well. One of them is from actually a SMAD major, graduated as a SMAD major, and is looking at some grad programs. And her name's Jessica, and she's on the line, and was just wondering if you could share a little bit more about, your time in Italy, how you chose that grad program, and just a little bit more about that experience.
Yeah, that's a great question. So hi, Jessica. For myself, I knew as a SMAD student that I was looking more at that time, documentary filmmaking. I was really interested more in independent film rather than going out to LA. I had a lot of classmates that went to the bigger cities. As I mentioned, I'm not a big city person, so I was looking more for an environment that was a little bit more comfortable for me. But I have classmates in New York and LA and working for great companies up there. So if you're interested as well in trying to approach a larger film scene or production scene, I would definitely encourage you to reach out to JMU alumni. This is something that I did throughout my time since graduation, and they can often provide a lot of great feedback on not only companies, but also how they kind of broke into the business and advice that they would have. So that's one of the biggest things I do, is really just talk to people. And in terms of how I got to Italy and food communications, when I went to school and decided to major in SMAD in digital video, I chose that career because I'm interested in so many different things, and I knew that film would be a way that I could really explore those different topics. And so after graduation and working in all these different jobs, I was really actually trying to focus myself a bit more. I found that I needed something a little less open-ended, and long story short, I was working with some local restaurants in Harrisonburg and realized that the food community was really where I wanted my focus to be, connected with my family heritage. I'm Italian, so everything, food is everything. So it led me to this Italian program, and just really helped me focus. So it was food communication, so it was multimedia, so it was video production, but also integrated my writing background, a lot of the community outreach that I had experienced through my jobs. So for me, it was a way to kind of bring all of my work experience together while also staying true to that major that I had in college. So depending on what kind of environment you're looking to work in, if you're looking to work for a film company, I would definitely recommend starting to reach out to some of the types of companies you'd be interested in, sending those inquiry emails, just saying, you know, hey, I'm a recent, I'm a SMAD graduate. I'm really interested in working in this field. Do you have any advice? I feel like people are much more likely to respond to questions about advice and their own experience than they are to, job requests, because they get those all the time, and they are much more willing to share what they've learned. I think people really do want to help. So yeah, asking for that advice, I think, is a great way to start. And I'd be happy to, if you want to send me an email after this, I'd be happy to talk more with you about it. So yeah, great question. Thanks so much.
That's wonderful. Yeah, and she also just wanted to kind of hear maybe, different specific opportunities that you've seen just being in the Richmond area and being so immersed in that community, what you've seen available out there for those, your fellow SMAD alumni.
Yeah, definitely. So I follow a lot of different companies here in Richmond. They're doing great work on, capturing the community. So Creative Dog Media is an excellent company. They do really beautiful videography of city scenes here. You also have, let me see if I can, Double Take Productions is another great one. And they do a lot of festival coverage. I'm trying to think now, but Ben Serber, he's a JMU alumni, and I can look up, he's a friend of my family, so he's working here as a freelancer. And there's a couple other JMU alumni and connections down here where we're kind of all working together. So yeah, look up Ben on LinkedIn or send me a message. I can connect you because he's been down here for a while working directly in the film scene. So yeah, those are just a couple of companies that you could follow. Also the American Marketing Association and the Virginia Film Office. They're based in Charlottesville, but they have opportunities throughout the state. Would be some good places to start.
I think that's some great advice, and what I really loved is how you really honed in on the power of that Madison network. As being just that opportunity of, connecting together and just learning and really growing, what you would professionally and personally want to accomplish.
Absolutely.
We have another question in from Allie. Allie asked if the pressure of being stable, so, the pressures that we all face of covering living expenses, having health insurance, etc., has ever kept you from pursuing opportunities that you were passionate about, and how did you manage that?
Yes, that is an excellent question and a really good point. That is, I think, the biggest struggle is figuring out, especially with health insurance, honestly, that's one of the biggest things. Because you can't just follow your passion blindly. You have to be practical. You have to be able to pay the bills and feed yourself. And I really love food, so having that paycheck is crucially important. So yeah, you're not always able to follow that passion. So one of the things that really worked for me was if I was working in a job that wasn't necessarily in my chosen field, it was teaching me different skills and helping me grow as a professional. So I was valuing it in that way, but then on the side, I was also trying to find ways to connect with my creative self and keep you know, that passion alive sort of on the side. So that's actually how I got into doing photography exhibits. I also did some films with a local film festival there in Harrisonburg called the Super Great Film Festival. So through pursuing those opportunities on the side, outside of my job, it helps fulfill me and fulfill some of the passions that I wasn't necessarily getting in my working life every day. And it also introduced me to a great network of creative people. I met some of my best friends that way, you know, doing exhibits together, and it helped me also, you know, learn about myself and build skills that I used in future jobs like exhibition design and event planning. So I think, yeah, sometimes you just have to take the job that is available, even if it's not that dream job, but don't lose heart, you know, find those ways on the side that you can connect with your interests and your passions until you are able to eventually evolve into a job that hopefully encompasses those too.
Yeah, I mean, that perfectly ties to what you were saying before, that, you know, that dream job, you create that. And that for some people may take a little bit more experiences and time
Absolutely.
to accomplish. But as you mentioned here, you know, now that was that right time to begin. We have time for one final question. I think it's pretty relevant to your initial slide, congratulating our upcoming graduates this December. So I know you mentioned a few things like right before you graduated that you wish you had known, such as, you know, asking for help. But can you think of any other advice that you wish you had received right before graduation that you wanted to share with any of those soon-to-be grads that are on with us live right now?
Yes. For me, I am a bit of a procrastinator. I was very focused my last semester in particular on really finishing up. I was in the honors program, so I was doing a thesis and doing a video documentary as part of that. So my focus was honestly a little blurry in terms of life after graduation. So I didn't really get into a lot of the traditional like resume writing and interviewing skills and all of those things. I mean, I had part-time jobs and I had interviewed before, but I didn't really you know, spend a lot of time on that stuff until I'd already graduated and had been out for a little while, and then I was sort of scrambling. So I would say for the recent or soon-to-be grads, using, especially since you're still on campus, use those resources on campus. I didn't go to career and academic planning until like embarrassingly long afterwards, probably like 4 or 5 months afterwards for the first time. So even if you're like leaving right after graduation, go today or tomorrow. They have a lot of really great checklists and resources and like print materials that you can take with you, as well as, of course, there's Recruit a Duke. But connect with those things now, and also LinkedIn. If you're not on LinkedIn, do it now. It's awesome, and it will really help you connect with your classmates because they could become your colleagues or your connections after graduation, your professors. So build a lot of those connections now while they're present so that you don't have to then scramble later on. Because I really do think that the JMU network is really strong. We're a really supportive group of people, and we have those resources at our disposal. So just don't forget to use them.
That's great final advice. We do have a few questions still coming in, so Nicole, if you wouldn't mind going back to that contact slide that you had.
Absolutely.
And it sounds like you're open to connecting with our attendees, so if I was not able to get to your question, definitely reach out to Nicole directly. She's provided her contact information there, and I'm sure she would be happy to answer any of the questions that we didn't get to in today's webinar. But I just want to, again, thank you, Nicole, for giving us some really great actionable steps, whether you are graduating tomorrow or if you're 30 years out from graduation, and some really cool resources that are applicable to wherever you find yourself in that journey. So on behalf of the JMU Alumni Association, thank you for your time and presentation, and thank you to all of our attendees who attended live with us. I do want to ask for you to please take a moment to complete the survey that you'll receive when you exit this webinar. Your feedback helps us to continue to provide tailored programming for you, our alumni. And I do hope that you will join us for our next webinar to ring in the new year. It'll be on Thursday, January 19th at noon Eastern Standard Time. And that is featuring alumnus Zach Mercurio as he engages us in his presentation, More Than a Resolution, How to Awaken Your Purpose in 2017. So again, I hope you all have a wonderful afternoon. Thank you for joining us today, and we will see you soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.